Okay, Kevin. So I guess the first question is why?
Have you got about 2 days? It actually started when I was a little kid. I had a fascination for nature. And as I got older, the animals just got bigger and bigger. And what actually started out as pretty much self indulgence when it came to lions, because I met these two little lion cubs at a safari park and I fell in love with them. And I thought to myself, I just can't wait for this lion to get to an age where I can actually embrace him and put my head in his big, fat, fluffy mane. And but soon after, the relationship started with these two guys, which
Really? That's what
kick-started.
you said? I can't wait for them to grow up so I can.
Yeah, it was all about me, and it was about getting a picture with this big lion, and it would be fantastic to show all my friends, and it would be, it was really about that. And soon after meeting them and actually getting to know lions in a way that most others don't ever get the opportunity to do, I realized that there was so much more to it. And it wasn't just about my self indulgence. I realized that lions were actually facing a predicament. And that 100 years ago, we had 450,000 lions roaming in Africa. And to date, that number's dropped down to 20,000. So as I was doing all these crazy things with lions, so my recognition was advancing and people were starting to take notice. And I realized that there was a lot that I could do.
So there's obviously the problem of conservation of lions. How much of your interest in this is connected to the danger? Let's say they had no teeth and no claws. They were just like, I don't know,
Big
what else could be? But they were just friendly to everybody. Would it be as attractive for you as the danger?
Yeah, I suppose it's a good question because if they weren't these animals that had the potential to kill you, would I be as fascinated with them? Would everyone be as fascinated with them? And I think that is the question, because why do people want to hunt them? They are classified as one of the big five, and for those of you who don't know why they're called the big five, it's because they were the most dangerous animals to hunt in Africa. So maybe they wouldn't be in the situation that they're in if they didn't have these big teeth and these big claws.
But we talk about your psychology. So
So I was trying to avoid that.
you did
But
you did
yes,
a good job.
there is a fascination, again, since a kid, with things that are potentially dangerous, like spotted hyenas that's in the background there. So yes, there's this fascination, and I suppose it's something that has intrigued me about them.
And are you still afraid when you're dealing with them, or now are you looking for more frightening things to do?
No, I think lions are quite enough. Actually, over the years, it is. I use the analogy. It's like a pilot just getting his license. He's at his most dangerous when he gets that license, and then as he accumulates hours of flying, he gains experience. You basically start with a bucket empty of experience and a bucket full of luck. And you better hope that when the one runs out, the other's full. And it really much is like that with lions. All of my close calls were really when I was young and naive and thought I could conquer the world. So early on in my career of working with lions, but as I've worked with them now well over 16 years, and I'm still around and I haven't been eaten, people start to say, well, maybe he does know something about these animals. So
So
yeah.
what were some of your close calls?
Well, I was attacked by a male lion quite early on. I'd known these two cubs and I'd raised them, and I felt sorry for this particular lion because he had come from a facility where was kept as a pet, and he was declawed. This is a phenomenon that happens still to this day, where people want to have this relationship with these animals, so they defang them or they declaw them. And I felt sorry for him because he had been showered with this love as a youngster. And then when he got too big, he had been declawed, and then he was still dangerous. And so he got tossed aside like a used oil rag, and he landed up at our park. And so I used to interact with him through the fence because I thought he had this human connection, and eventually convinced myself that I could communicate with him. And I went in with him, and I got away with it for months on end until my nephew's 8th birthday party at the park, where he wanted me to go in with this lion, and I'd made some rules to myself about how I would interact with him. And on this particular day, he wouldn't come up to the fence. And so I decided to go in with him, and he sorted me
So
out.
this was kind of showing up to your 8-year-old nephew?
Correct, exactly. It was basically under peer pressure, and the whole family
From
was
an
there.
8-year-old.
From an 8-year-old, and the family surrounding the 8-year-old and all the
No, no.
expectations. Yeah, so
So you go in and
I go in, and he was just biding his time, waiting for me to get beyond a point where he knew that there wasn't enough time for me to get out in time, and he just sat there looking until I reached that mark, and then he got up, ran towards me, and even though he was declawed, he still came down and gave me a huge smack on the face, which caused an instant nosebleed. I don't remember much what happened from there, but when I did come round, I was in the middle of his area. So I'd moved about 15, 20 meters, and he was proceeding to bite me in various areas of my body. And the thing about a lion is, almost that cat and mouse. When you move, then they do something, especially when he's in this situation. And so I wasn't moving, but when I did come around, I thought, crikey, I've got to do something here and get out of here. And luckily, there was a guy who worked with me at the time who came in and tried to help me and diverted his attention. So he left me alone to go for him, and I managed to get up and get out.
so he was in a bad mood in general. It wasn't just you. He would attack anybody that day.
No, the thing is back then I didn't really realize about the behavior, the psychology of a lion. And, as now knowing what I know now, it was really about his territory and you going in there. And he wasn't trying to kill me, because if a lion tries to kill you, even without claws, he's going to just do it in one bite. So it was really a thing about I'm bigger than you, and this is my turf, and you're coming in here and trying to throw your weight around. I'll teach you a lesson, which he did.
And how long did you learn that lesson? What?
Well, it was after working with lions for about a year and a half. So it was an early lesson, and I call it a lucky lesson. And I did learn from it.
And did you make up with this particular lion?
Well, I did, but the relationship with lions, it's like any relationship. It needs constant work, and no surprise if what you put in is what comes out. But a lot of the time with big mature lions is that they lose their want to form relationships after a certain age. And he was at that age where he wasn't quite sure of my intentions, and I wasn't quite sure of his, so we decided to call it a day.
And
Wisely.
you moved to other lions.
Yeah, well, in that time I had been working with other lions too, so they were all getting big, and the family was growing, and so got to a point where I realized that what was I doing? It was a situation where I was faced with, I can't keep on keeping all these lions, and this facility that I was at was part of an industry whereby these lions are bred, and then the paying tourist market will come there and pet them and take pictures with them. And I only found out at a later stage what actually happens to these cats once they get too big. And it's a phenomenon in South Africa that's a huge problem called canned hunting. And for those of you who don't know what canned hunting is, it's really about a lion that's been raised in a captive environment, and then it's released into an area where you can't even call it hunting because it doesn't have a chance of fair escape. And then a hunter will come out from wherever in the world to pay a sum to shoot it. Basically like clubbing seals or, fishing with dynamite. And that's something that I campaign quite strongly for, against. Yeah. And it brings me around the world.
So as you've learned so much about lions' behavior and psychology, are there things in their behavior or psychology that you admire, that you say, I wish people were more like that?
I do. I think they live a very simple life, a very simplistic life. They don't take more than they need, and they utilize their environment very well. And I think most people could take a leaf out of a lion's book on that score.
But there's not much to buy. So it could have been that if we started opening real estate agencies and banks, they would have behaved differently.
Exactly.
And are there particular things in their behavior that you wish you could have changed?
Well, the one thing that always comes to mind with the male lion is they need to learn to share. That's a really bad attribute.
Are the females sharing?
The females are more caring and more sharing. They grow up in this. They're the only truly social cat. Most people don't know that, but there's no other cat out there, and it's a very interesting thing. And scientists are still trying to figure out why. Why in their evolutionary pathway did they form these societies? And it's been a very good way of living in the African savannah. And why did other big cats not follow suit? The cheetah is a cat that does show some signs of socialness, but not like the lion. So sharing is one thing that I think male lions need to figure out.
So how do the females share, and what do the males do in contrast?
Well, the females would typically, also again, contrary to popular belief, male lions do hunt quite a bit. They don't just become the king of the jungle and then lie down, sit back, and
Oh, good to know.
and take the lion's share. Well, they do take the lion's share when the kills are made, but they have an important job, and that's to patrol the real estate. Because without the real estate, there's nothing for the family to eat, so to speak. But the females will go and hunt, and they'll bring down the prey, and they'll share it out. Everyone will get their full. But if a male lion's there, he'll just chase everyone off, especially if the prey is too small to go around. He doesn't care that they can all starve or they can go and hunt something else. He's going to eat that, and he's going to protect it.
So the male is going to eat that particular prey and not share with anybody.
Not share with anyone else. Yeah, especially if it's not big enough. If it's big enough, then he doesn't care. Then he'll get his full. Yeah.
But then they've had enough, and then it's not considered sharing if you don't have to sacrifice anything.
Exactly.
So is it fair to say that they're much more selfish than the females?
I would say, yeah. I think and it's probably they're geared that way because they have to protect the territory and have to be strong to ward off any potential rivals.
That's a rationalization of their behavior. So I want to go back a little bit to your own risk taking. So one of the things we see with all kinds of behaviors is that you have behaviors with low probability of happening. So think about something like texting and driving, and the probability that you will text and drive and something bad would happen is relatively low. Let's say it's 2%. So one day you text and drive and nothing bad happens. But at the end of that, you don't say to yourself, oh my goodness, I was lucky. You say, probably the probability was less than 2%. Maybe it was 1.5%. And then you do it again and again and again, and you keep on taking extra risk. And there is this vicious cycle where things that have low probability of happening, when the probability of bad things happening is very low, there's a chance that people would become extra basically not worried at all, extra overconfident because of that. And are you experiencing some of that cycle as you? I mean, these are incredibly dangerous animals.
It's a very good question, and it's a fair question, and I think that is something that I'm always conscious of, and probably why I'm still here talking to you, interacting with lions in that way.
Or maybe it's the luck bucket is not run out yet.
Maybe it hasn't run out, but I think what most people who know me well would tell you that over the years you develop the ability really to read the body language and to know. I suppose that the talent really is not knowing when to interact, but knowing when not to interact, and giving them their space and being humble around them and being respectful. And I think you are walking on a knife edge, and it is probably likened a bit to texting and driving, and I'm fully aware of that.
And how do you remind yourself? I'll give you another example. I talked to somebody from British Petroleum, and he said that basically what happened in oil rigs is similar to this problem, is that if you have an oil rig, he said he thinks that an oil rig should be shut down about 3 times a week. There's small sign of something bad will happen. If something bad will happen, it will be really big.
Yes.
But the probability is very small. But he said if you shut the rig down, everybody gets upset with you, and you don't see that you might have saved a lot of things. But if you don't shut the rig down, you get a positive reward that nothing bad happened. And he said as a consequence, the probability of shutting the rig is actually very low because people are learning from these bad signs. And his question was, how do you keep people consciously thoughtful about the danger of these small signals? Because you have all of these small signals that many times do not materialize.
Sure.
So what do you do to basically remind yourself all the time that you're dealing? I mean, it seems so social and so wonderful, and they seem to like you, but at the same time, they're incredibly dangerous. How do you keep on remembering how dangerous they are?
I think it's a conscious thing that you got to keep on telling yourself, and the humility. It really is something that has got me to where I am, and knowing that they have the ability to kill you with one swipe or with one bite, but getting to know them intimately is also the secret. We're talking about beings that are sentient. I mean, and we know that they have this ability to be truly social, and they don't just go around killing each other, because that's not in their best interest. And the fact that they're accepting a foreigner into their prides is no surprise. So yeah, I mean, it's something that you have to keep at the top of your grey matter, but it's not something that I consciously have to think about or worry about.
Okay, so you don't go into it and try to assess the probability. You just kind of
No, you go with the flow.
you go with the
You go with the gut, or with the what's developed, or tried to hone over the years is the sixth sense, and try and listen to it.
I guess in 20 years from now we'll be able to assess whether you really have a sixth sense or not.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting thing because, when the mark hit 5 years, I was like, people, do you think I know what I'm doing? And then it was like, no, you don't know what you go for another 5 years. Another 5 years went by. Well, I'm still doing what I'm doing. Is the probability that I'm going to get attacked less? And then I'll go for another 5 years. So it's now going over 16 years. And yeah, so I think I'll continue doing it and see.
Okay, I mean that's a great hypothesis. We'll let's talk a little bit about conservation.
Yeah.
So this is clearly something very central to you, both in nature and in captivity. What do you think are kind of the crucial steps for conservation? What should we try to do next?
Yeah, I think the big issues facing lions, and lions being an apex predator is a big issue. Well, it filters down into all other species. Is habitat loss is first and foremost. So yeah, lions are facing people encroaching on their habitat, and then when the lions retaliate and kill livestock, etc., people in turn retaliate and kill lions. So it's not a win-win situation. We've also got a thing that's culminating in the lion bone trade, which is taking over from tiger bone, and it's similar to rhino horn, traditional Chinese medicine. So there's a big issue facing lions. I mean, we've got 20,000 odd lions left in Africa, and if we don't do something about it, we're actually just starting to see the tip of the iceberg, and we all know what's happened with rhino populations. I mean,
And elephants.
and elephants. So if we don't do something about it, we're looking at 3 of the big 5 vanishing in the next 15, 20 years. And then I won't even go into, at this point in time, the captive populations and what they're facing, because it's just, it's absolutely sordid industry, and it needs to be rectified. It's ethically and morally repugnant.
So what can be done on just let's talk about the ones who are in the wild. What are you proposing?
Well, wild lions, we need to look at restoring habitat by taking down fences. It's a phenomenon in South Africa that's a problem, and letting the lions and animals roam free. So taking out human intervention, letting the animals do what they know how to do. And that is really the trick, first and foremost, is to try and buy up habitat, try and acquire habitat, and try and make communities part of the whole thing. Because if the communities are not benefiting, the lions sure as hell are not. So that's where we're focusing, that's where we're aiming, and we're trying to go down that road.